الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين صدق الله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم يا ربي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما. Respected ulama, huffaz, brothers and listeners, Maulana Abdul Hafiz Damat Barakatuhum has requested me to say a few words, and when I asked him what the topic was, he says you can speak on any topic that you see fit and what you think is appropriate. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me the ability to say what is beneficial for all of us, and especially myself, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a means of guidance for all of us, inshallah. Ameen. So the verse that I recited to you, in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions to us that He is the one that gave goodness to everything that He created, and He perfected everything. Everything that He created, there's perfection in the creation. Sometimes we might not feel it is that way, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Sometimes the forms of human beings might not seem perfect to us, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything with perfection according to His infinite knowledge. And in there Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that He created man from clay. That's how He began the creation of man. And mankind, his creation is from a semen drop. In another place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions min nutfa, which is a semen drop. In another place Allah says وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ, that indeed we created man, human being, me and you, from an extract of clay. So this is the origin of man, this is the reality of man. That sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the term clay, sometimes the term nutfa, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the term dust, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions min salsal, sounding clay. Different things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, but in all of that, what we need to understand is that is our reality. The reality and the origin of our creation is from these things that we don't even consider to be important. But at the same time, even though this is our creation, what do? We feel that we are superior. We think that we are mighty. We think that we have power, we think that we have strength, we think that we have control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that you used to consider yourself high and mighty. In the Quran He says that, but in reality, when we will go before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is our destiny. We have come from the soil, in other words, our creation is from that. منها خلقناكم وفيها نعيدكم ومنها نخرجكم تارة أخرى. From the dust, from the soil, Allah says, we created you. And then at the time of our death, we will go back into the soil. We will be buried. When everybody will be performing our janaza salah, at that particular time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that that's where we will all go. In the grave, in the soil, the coffin will be there, but in reality, the best way to do it is to be buried in the soil. The only reason why it's done in the coffin here is because of the soil. It becomes soggy and wet. But in places where it doesn't become soggy and wet, that's how burials take place. So that is our reality. And then from there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment will resurrect us again, revive us again. And that time will be the time of questioning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created every single thing with perfection. Whether it is mankind, whether it is animals, all the different types of animals, those that gallop, those that walk, those that trot, those that run, those that even creep, the ants that creep, certain insects they creep. All of these, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created everything, and everything is perfect in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has created everything perfect. However, this perfection, this creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, at the end of the day, it is creation. There is only one thing that will remain forever. Everything is going to end. Our lives will end, our bodies will end, our buildings will end, our houses will end, our cars will finish, our cars will perish, our transportation will perish. Every single thing will perish, everything will be destroyed, everything will come to an end except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to that. Kullu man alayha fan وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. In the Surah Ar-Rahman, those of us that know about Surah Ar-Rahman, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly reminding both jinn and mankind that how many favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will you keep on denying? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? So many favors Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. So many. In fact, if we look at the verse of the Holy Quran, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. That if you were to count and enumerate the favor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the term ni'mah. He hasn't said favors, he has said favor. If you were to count the favor of Allah, you cannot count them, meaning not even one favor. So for example, I'll just give you an example and you'll probably be able to understand what I'm talking about. Just take the example of eyesight. Now everybody has eyesight. From the eyesight, what do? We look at the beautiful things of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We look at our friends and colleagues, our family members. We look at books, we look at the splendor of the world, we look at the beauty of the world, we look at the creation, we look at the heavens, we look at the earth, we look at the trees, we look at everything, we look at one another. So many different colors we can perceive through the eyes. We can see the beauty of Allah through all these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Here we can see the wonderful carpet. We can see the mihrab. We can see everything. The eyes, hundreds and thousands of things we can perceive through the eyes. Not even thousands, hundreds of thousands and millions of images we can see through the eyes. However, this is one ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can we count? Can we count the ni'mah and the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah did not mention ni'am, which is the plural of ni'mah. He said, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you count the favor of Allah, one favor of Allah, you cannot even count one favor of Allah. You cannot enumerate one favor of Allah. Just the eyesight. That is how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that one favor you cannot even count. So in the Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding mankind favor after favor, and He is also mentioning certain things that will take place. And again He's saying, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? So at that time, I was mentioning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that everything will come to an end. The creation will come to an end. But what will remain? We learn in the Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah says, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Everything on the earth will perish. Everything will be destroyed. Everything will be coming to an end. What will remain? وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Only the face of your Lord, the owner of majesty and honor, will remain. Only Allah will remain. Allah has been here and in existence, and there is no beginning to that, and He will remain, and there is no ending to that. For infinity. So this verse informs us that Allah is the being that will remain forever. Everything else will be destroyed. So when we know that our creation is from things that we don't even consider to be important, do we need to be arrogant? Do we need to show pride? Do we need to boast? Do we need to consider ourselves high and mighty? Even the most powerful of the creation, what do we consider to be very strong and powerful? In every single thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, there is a message of Tawheed. There is a message of oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a message of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that is created, we learn from that the greatness and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are people who wonder how they will be brought back from the dead. How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, once the body is decomposed in the grave, how will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be able to create them again? Who can create? Allah says, Am khalaqus samawati wal ard. Are they the ones that created the heavens and the earth. In another place Allah says, Am khuliku min ghayri shay'in am humul khaliqun. Have they been created from nothing? Or are they the creators? Referring to mankind. That have they just come into existence? Or are they the ones that create? No, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that created them. He created them. And for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creation of mankind is easier. He has created the heavens and the earth. أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاءِ. Allah says, أَأَنْتُمْ أَشَدُّ خَلْقًا أَمِ السَّمَاءِ بَنَاهَا. Are you a more difficult creation? You human beings, are you a more difficult creation? Or is the heaven more difficult to create? The answer is obvious. The heaven is much more difficult. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it. So the one who created the heavens, is He not able to give life to the dead? He says, Banaha. He is the one that created the heavens. Rafa'a samkaha. He raised its height. Fasawaha. And He proportioned it. He did it in a perfect way. As I said, Allah has made everything perfect. At the moment we see the sky, we take it for granted. We never even ponder over how it's functioning. The sun moves all the time. وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرِّ لَهَا. Those of you who recite Surah Yasin will know that the sun runs and moves to a place appointed to it. It does that every day. It's been doing it for thousands of years, and it will continue to do its job until the day of judgment. Such massive and huge planets which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. So the heavens, the sun and the moon, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلًا. And the moon, we have determined for it phases. حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْأُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. Until it returns like the old date stalk. So that's the shape that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning. So the moon is doing its job. The sun is doing its job. It's doing it precisely how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained it, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for it, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has determined for it, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. The sun is doing its job, the moon is doing its job, the sky is doing its job, the earth is doing its job. These are the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, these powerful entities that we see and we take for granted. So is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not able to resurrect mankind? So in all of this, what we need to understand, there's many lessons we can take. One of the most important lessons from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the perfection in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the lesson of Tawheed, that we know that there is nobody else that can create anything like what I've just mentioned. Human being cannot create mankind. A human being cannot create the earth. A human being cannot create the sky and the heavens. A human being cannot create trees. A human being cannot create the sun. A human being cannot create the moon. Human being does not have power to send down rain and bring down rain from the heavens. This is all the power of all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is one of the messages of Tawheed that we take for granted. So everything that we see around us, if we look at them, if we ponder over their existence, it will point to the fact that we have only one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One Allah Almighty. He has the power. He is the most powerful. We have no power. We are weak. So if these things, these heavenly bodies, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described as being perfect, we need to use them in a way that it benefits us for the hereafter. So if in the earth, we walk in the earth with arrogance, and we take things from the earth which are unlawful, that is not beneficial. If we walk in the earth with humility, if we walk with humbleness, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we only take which is halal and what is lawful, it will benefit our hereafter. خُلِقَتِ الدُّنْيَا لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ خُلِقْتُمْ لِلْآخِرَةِ. You have been created for the hereafter, although the world has been created for you. This is for our benefit. It is for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all these favors so that we take what is sufficient for our hereafter, and we make sure that we are fully successful in the hereafter when we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the sun, we shouldn't be attached to the sun like those people who worship the sun. There are people that worship the sun. There are others who worship the moon. There are others who worship trees. Others who worship people, creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These things are not there for these purposes. These are there for our benefit for the hereafter. And as I mentioned, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Everything will perish. Everything will be finished. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the face mentioned here is referring to the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. Only Allah will remain. Everything else will perish. Everything else will be gone. So from this, what do we learn? We need to focus on the hereafter. We need to understand our reality. And although these things are very powerful in front of us, we see that they look very big and gigantic, and they have a lot of beauty and splendor. But when it really matters, these things will not have any value as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the heavens, for example. What does he say? إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انشَقَّتْ. When the heaven will be split. When the heaven will be split on the day of judgment, it will have no value. So these things, although they are for our benefit, but in reality they will have no value. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy everything with the human beings, with the jinn. Everything will be destroyed, even the heavens will be destroyed. إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ. When the heaven will be cleft asunder in relation to the moon. How gigantic is the moon? How powerful is the moon? Millions of miles away from us, but still we can't bear its heat. We can't bear its heat. It is so gigantic, it has so much power, it has so much heat. But prior to the advent of Qiyamah, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? إِذَا السَّمَاءُ إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. When the sun will be wrapped up. When we wrap clothing up, we say we wrapped clothing up. Our topi, for example, our caps, we wrap it up and put it in the drawer. Our jubbas we wrap up and put in the drawer. Our turban we wrap it, put in the drawer. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing how the sun will be prior to the advent of Qiyamah. At that particular time, what will happen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will wrap the sun up. Another translation is إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, when the sun is made to cease shining, it will no longer shine. فَإِذَا بَرِكَ الْبَصَرُ وَخَسَفَ الْقَمَرُ. So we've talked about the sun. We look at the moon as well. Every single one is able to sight the moon. We don't have to queue. We don't have to stand in line. Wherever we are, billions and billions of people simultaneously can see the moon. Such a powerful entity. Such a powerful creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا بَرِقَ الْبَصَرُ وَخَسَفَ الْقَمَرُ, that when the eyes are dazzled, the eyes will be dazzled, and the eyes will be bewildered. Everybody witnessing that will be bewildered. They won't know what's happening. Such will be the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such will be the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the moon will become dark. So the moonlight gives us light. Through that light we walk. That will no longer happen. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do. And what about the powerful mountains? We have powerful mountains, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes these mountains as pegs. Why? Why does He describe them as pegs? Is the reason for that is that so that the earth stops to shake. أَن تَمِيدَ بِهِمْ وَجَعَلْنَا فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ أَن تَمِيدَ بِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed on the earth these mountains so that the earth stops to shake. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described the role of the mountains. There are many other roles of the mountain. We look at mountains, how magnificent they are. They have different color stones. Some mountains are made up of different minerals, others are made up of different substances. But what we know, that they are powerful entities. They are humongous. They're humongous. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing us that these things that you see as powerful, these things that you consider to be strong, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have no power whatsoever. And prior to the advent of Qiyamah, prior to Qiyamah, at that particular time, on the day of judgment, what will happen? They will be flying around kal ihnil manfush, like fluffed up wool. Have you seen wool which is fluffed up? The mountains, powerful. So on the one hand, you will see the sun, it will have nothing left in it, it will be wrapped up. The moon will become dark. The waters will overflow. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. And we have these mountains that we take for granted. We find it difficult to climb these mountains. Those people who have the desire to climb on mountains. I met one individual and I asked him whether he exercised. He says, what I like to do, I don't exercise on the ground. I like to go uphill, because through that I can build more stamina. So there are some people who like to climb on mountains. And you've probably heard many have attempted to climb the Mount Everest. Some have been successful, others haven't. But it takes so much attention to detail. You've got to plan your journey, and others are unsuccessful. How many people die as a result of their failure? And you have few people that have attempted that. So these mountains, which are supposed to be powerful creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, on the day of judgment, what will happen? They will be flying around like fluffed up wool. وَتَكُونُ الْجِبَالُ كَالْإِهْنِ الْمَنْفُوشِ. And the mountains will be like fluffed up wool. So these powerful heavenly bodies, these things that we have on the earth, supporting the earth to make sure that they don't shake, all these things on the day of judgment, they will have no value. What will have value? What will have value? And it's important for us to ponder over these things, because if we ponder over these things, we will realize that we are going to have to go for judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is an inevitable fact. It's not these powerful bodies. It is not our powerful bodies. Who are we in comparison to the people of Ad, the people of Thamud? They were powerful. The shortest of them were approximately 160 feet tall, and the tall ones were 100 feet tall. That's how big they were. Today, nowadays, we consider somebody who's 6 foot tall to be very tall. Somebody who is a bit taller will be 6.5 feet, and somebody who is 7 feet tall will probably take selfies with him. And we'll probably tell our colleagues and friends or anybody passing by that I want to stand next to him. Can you take an image of me? And then the image will be taken, and then we'll send it to our friends and families, and we'll say, look, I stood next to this guy who's 7 feet tall. So it's a wonder. But the people of Ad, they were up to 100 feet tall. But when the time came, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them. So the physical power, the physical strength, the strength that we can see, the strength that we can perceive, that in reality is not the real power, the real strength. The real power and real strength is what we have to show in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ مِنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Whatever good you have sent forth for yourselves, you will find it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you have done righteous deeds, if you have performed your 5 daily prayers, if you gave zakat to the poor and needy, if you gave in charity, then you will be successful. Referring to those who are not successful, Allah says in the Suratul Qiyamah, فَلَا صَدَّقَ وَلَا صَلَّى. فَلَا صَدَّقَ وَلَا صَلَّى. He did not accept the truth. He did not perform prayer. And commentators in relation to prayer, some say that it's referring to general prayer, general dua. Others say that it's referring to the prayers that we do, the salah, the 5 daily prayers. And brothers, we need to understand that when we're performing salah, we shouldn't only concentrate on the salah, which is obligatory. We have to make sure that with the obligatory prayer, we also do the nafil and voluntary prayer. Why do I say that? Today, it's our habit that we perform what is only necessary. What isn't necessary, we won't do that. Because we learn from a hadith that if there are any discrepancies, if there are any problems, if there are any things which have remained deficient, if there's a shortfall, then the shortfall will be fulfilled through the voluntary prayers. So the more voluntary prayers we have, the more voluntary salah we have, the better it is. Because look at the state of our prayers as it is at this particular moment in time. Even our fars is full of problems. We have lack of concentration in our salah. Once there was a muqtadi, somebody performing salah behind the imam, and after the salah was completed, what happened was that muqtadi said to the imam that you've only completed 3 rakats today rather than 4. So he asked the imam, he mentioned that to the imam. The imam asked him, how do you know that? How do you know? He said, every day when I'm performing my salah, in every rakat, I do the calculation of each of my 4 business that I have. Each one I do in each rakat. And today I've only completed the calculation of 3 of my businesses. Therefore I know for sure that only 3 rakats have been completed. That is the situation of our prayer. That is the situation of our salah. So we need to ensure that with the fars, we have voluntary prayers as well. We need to make sure that we have voluntary prayers, because it can make up the difference if we need that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability and tawfiq that when we meet Him on the day of judgment, we have plenty of deeds. And even if we have those deeds, the main thing that we need from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is His blessings, His fadl, His bounty, His grace. Because without His bounty and His grace, we cannot just go into paradise and have eternal bliss with our deeds. It has to be through the mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability and tawfiq to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with good deeds, as I mentioned, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all a high place in paradise, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us forgiveness. I will inshallah complete my talk here, and the main speech is by my teacher and our teacher Zama Bilal Sahab, who has just arrived. Inshallah, as soon as he's completed his prayer, he will start to speak to you. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.